we can already hear you. So,
Okay.
while he's getting that stuff set up, why don't you introduce
Oops, that's
yourself?
the wrong day.
Hi everybody, I'm Sheila, I go by Sharpie inside of the community, and you may know me as that person that reminds people to play Skullgirls. You may also know me as FGC Mom, someone who wrote for FGC Dad, and I've done a couple of skits, as well as I also am the FGC head tournament organizer at Xanadu Games.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, and I co-founded Combo Queens with Carolyn. I'm one of the co-founders, and I do a lot of things, I guess. But most notably, everyone knows me as that one Skullgirls girl.
Yeah, you also bait people into, checking out Skullgirl stuff on social media, as you successfully baited me a couple of days ago.
I do want to publicly say that while my intentions with that tweet were positive, I could easily see how it was misconstrued as such, and I've since deleted that tweet. Because my intention is not to remove voices from others inside of the community at large. So I want to publicly state that, but I'm glad that you appreciated the tweet.
Yeah. I didn't even know that there was any sort of drama behind that tweet. That's crazy.
It's not, I don't even necessarily want to say that there's drama. It's just that this world is very vast. This world is very big. As much as people like to think that I'm like directly plugged into every single social media outlet, at the exact same time I can't see everything that's posted until like unfortunately after the fact, and unfortunately at that time there was a very, very long I shouldn't say unfortunately, what I should say is there was a very, very strong, courageous woman inside of the community who came out regarding things that happened to her previously with a well-known person inside of the Smash community. And they utilized the same format that I had. So it was just unfortunate that people had already seen her comments, and then unfortunately, I believe, conflated my statement with that. But that was just unfortunate timing on my aspect, but I completely understand what that was seen as by a majority of people. And so I don't want to encourage that at all. I don't want to encourage people making light of people that are sharing their story, because I think that's a really, really dark path to go around. And I know how hard it is to share something that personal to literal faceless people on the internet. So I'd never want to encourage or ever make anyone think that that's okay, ever. And as soon as it was brought up to my attention that that's how that tweet appeared, then I immediately removed it. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to make a statement until later, just due to the nature of this past week. So I wanted to, as soon as it was brought up to me, I deleted it. And as soon as I realized it wasn't okay, I deleted it. But it was a very messy and difficult 48 hours for me, to be very honest. Not anywhere as bad as earlier this month, and that's actually what I wanted to talk about, if that's okay with you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah. This is for you to talk. James, I don't know if you have anything else to say, but if you'd like to just begin sharing your perspective, that's all for you.
The only thing that I just want to ask, on stream here officially is, I hope you're doing okay. Not necessarily ask, but just say, I hope you're doing okay, and hope everything's been going well for you. Because I know how crazy it's been on social media these past few days. So
I will be very honest with you, because this is going to be like the last public appearance that I make, probably for a couple of weeks, just because I need to take some time for myself. But I am not currently okay. I appreciate the well-tithings very much so, but I'm not okay right now. And I'm not okay because right now we are in a very preventable quarantine situation that is disproportionately affecting people who look like me and who have been working very hard, very possibly to provide for their families and their loved ones. And by no fault of their own, they're no longer able to do so despite their best efforts. I'm upset and I'm not okay because that same administration is actively telling people that I and people who look like me are the cause, because we are trying to tell people that this country is not the same when you look like me. I'm not okay because a lot of people are not okay on social media. and I'm a person that people see as themselves. And so when I am silent about something, people assume that is complicity.
Right.
I'm not okay because there's shit in my life beyond this that is affecting me. And I apologize for cursing.
Oh, please, curse as much as you want.
But I do want to be very candid and say that right now it's very important that people speak up when they're not okay, especially right now, because there is nothing more powerful than the truth and honesty to tell people how you're really feeling and let people understand what's really going on in your life. Earlier this month, I don't want to say the thing that kicked all of this off, because there's a whole mirage of things that we could just go down that led up to this ultimate moment, but I'm going to speak on a moment that I haven't spoken about publicly. And earlier this month, I actually was on a stream with Mike Zaymont, Kai Kennedy, commentating a tournament that was organized by BG Callisto. I'm sorry, BJ Callisto. I always say BG. Ryan, he's so sweet. You guys probably know. And I was very excited for the opportunity to commentate, because it's been no secret that I really do want to commentate EVO, and I was excited for an opportunity to practice event casting again, because it's the last tournament that I was able to do it at, especially for Skullgirls, was eons ago. While I did commentate for Dragon Ball FighterZ and a few other games in the past, so I'm no stranger to event commentating, I finally got to commentate my game on a stream that I knew would be presented in a similar format to remind people of what offline tournaments look like. It would look exactly the same, essentially, to a viewer. It wouldn't be the same for everyone behind the curtain, but it would look exactly the same to just about anyone that was watching the match. And I was very excited to bring a sense of normality back to both my experience with gaming and everyone who was inside of my communities as well, because one of the things I was pushing before that moment was I actually hadn't verbally discussed Black Lives Mattered after the George Floyd video came out, because I watched that video and I realized that if anyone else watched that video, they wouldn't be able to see the good in people anymore. I couldn't finish that video. I broke down in tears like a small child. I'm not going to hide that fact. I couldn't finish it. That's where I was with it. And it really made it hard for me to go about the rest of my day and the rest of my week after I saw that video. And so I didn't expect anyone in their right mind to watch that video and stay silent, because I could barely do it. It's not easy to do. Right. So I had been trying to make an environment on my page where I was able to go through my timeline and not necessarily see pictures of people that look like me, specifically Black people, being attacked by cops, being attacked by fellow Americans, being attacked by even just other Black people for handling it wrong. I couldn't see it anymore without wanting to literally hurt myself. Yeah. And that was something that I actively had to realize was happening in order for me to disconnect. Right. Because when you are in a content creator or even just like a community manager or influencer figure, you feel like it is your job to inform people who are watching you, because you feel like you have an obligation to do things. But in reality, you need to come first. And I'm very guilty of not always putting myself first when I do things. So this tournament was fantastic, because I was excited for that opportunity to be like, look guys, our community may be going through things right now. We may not be in the best position in this world, but you know what? We're going to play some Skullgirls and we're going to freaking love it. And we're going to just talk for 2 hours and we're going to speak to one another and we're going to love. And that's what we're choosing to do right now. We are making a choice to do that. So the commentary set originally started with myself and Kai Kennedy. And I've commentated with Kai before. He's a great person. I really enjoy commentating with Kai. It was fun. I'm going to be very honest. It took us a little bit to get the levels together because commentating online is a little bit different than commentating in person, as I'm certain you guys both know and understand, having run the stream. But it's one of those things where it's just hard to find the same level, and yet somehow with Kai I was still able to match it. So I was very happy about that, because I partially felt like, man, Kai is just so great at sensing levels and sensing energy and understanding and reading flow, because we're not even seeing the game at the same time. It's delayed. We're looking at this through Discord. And so all of our verbiage that we have to use, we have to essentially say before an action happens. So we kind of have to like be a little bit foretelling, which, I mean, commentator cursed, right? But like this was next level. I was very impressed at the level that he was able to execute it, and the level that I was able to match him, because I think that without previous exposure to event streaming, I think that I very easily would have floundered there. And so we skip past that. They rotate Mike in, and Mike and Kai have commentated very frequently. They actually commentated the money match that I'm very infamous for inside of Skullgirls. And I actually think their commentary was A-notch, honestly. I will actively say this. I do not believe that Mike Z's commentary is necessarily bad. I will state that. I think he's a very informative commentator. I think that he is a very well-known and person inside of the game. Like, he actively knows frame data. He knows how what your options are at any point in stage. He understands how the characters are supposed to interact with each other, and you get a different level of commentary with that. The problem becomes that Mike isn't a commentator. What I mean by that is that he says what comes to his mind, regardless of how it will be construed. And that is not something that you want to do when you're in commentary. Commentary is very much so about understanding the other person you're on mic with, understanding the pace of the game, and understanding what you need to call attention to inside of that moment. It's not necessarily about just filling up airtime or anything like that. It's about making sure that you're able to inform people that are watching, or anyone who just happens to tune in to a VOD, that they completely understand what's going on, and you cover those points. You create that story and dialogue. You know what I mean? Well, obviously you guys do. So after Kai and Mike's block, I got back on for a TriCast. And I think previous to that, I ran with Mike on commentary for about an hour or something while Kai took a break, because at that point he had been on for quite some time. And I was also very well-winded. I'm sorry, not very well-winded. I was extremely tired at that point in time, because my room is not very well ventilated. I know you guys can't tell from the static image on your screen right now, but there are next to no vents inside of my room, and I don't get a lot of air conditioning. So when I'm not streaming, when I don't have my camera on, and when I'm not utilizing my microphone, I have a fan on in my face so that I can circulate air. But when I do things like this, or when I go on commentary or something, that fan interferes with my microphone volume, so I can't have it on. And sometimes if my roommate is like on the phone with her family or something, then I can't have my door open because I don't want to interrupt them. So it was a situation where I was already tired from the set before, but I was excited. I'd commentated with Mike before. It hadn't been entirely positive, in my opinion, but it was a set that we did. And so I was trying to go into it with a positive attitude, hoping that I had studied enough and practiced enough again, to adequately be able to match Mike's level, necessarily not completely understanding that Mike wasn't going to be as easy to commentate with as Kai, just by nature of it, which it's not a slight towards him. He's more of a player than anything. It's just sometimes people don't always have like an ABC for commentating. They're just very free flowing. And so I had to be able to easily adapt to that. I don't think the set went bad. I just think our synergy was off, and it wasn't incredibly easy for me to match a lot of his pacing, unfortunately, just because of I think our commentary styles just kind of clash a lot, unfortunately. And so anyway, we get into top 8, and there is a TriCast. It's now with Kai Kennedy, myself, and Mike Zaymont, and we are all on mic. And I was not having a very... I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to actively bounce and volley with Mike. So essentially, whenever Mike said something, I would let Kai respond, and then I would try to respond afterwards, and I would go from there. I never wanted to be someone that led the conversation because I didn't feel like people were responding necessarily positive when Mike responded afterwards. So I just kind of let it chill. Mm-hmm. There is a moment that is now very infamous, and that is a moment, I believe it's Gelato and Lanba, or maybe I'm confused. I just remember that Gelato was playing, unfortunately. And it was a very, very impressive moment for Skullgirls there, because one player was completely deriving the other player of any opportunities to do anything. I call it the vortex, right. You know, where you're just stuck there, mm-hmm. and that person now controls the entire pace of the game, and you have no say about it, and your only option is to figure out if you know the right defensive answer for this, mm-hmm. right? And the other player was kind of defeated at that point. So it wasn't happening. There right. was a statement that Mike said. He claims it was a joke. It was not interpreted by myself to be a joke, mm-hmm. or funny in any way, shape, or form. And I really, really wanted to support Mike here. On the clip, you can even hear me starting to laugh before, just because I wanted to go into that with a positive vibe, smiling, happy. Yeah, you know, this player really removed all his options. He is absolutely floored right now. He's mm-hmm. against a wall and a hard place. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Both me and Kai are like, he's completely busted right now. He's stuck. He's there. And then Mike says, would you say that he can't breathe? Mm-hmm. In that moment, I think I truly, genuinely believe that if there was camera on, I would probably get in trouble for not conducting myself professionally in that moment. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't say in trouble, actually. I shouldn't say that, because I think that there are enough people inside of the Skullgirls community and the general fighting game community that would understand my outrage if they saw me, mm-hmm. but it took a lot to not verbalize it. Yeah. It took a lot.
You know, not to interject yes. or anything, but, you know, I just kind of want to say, like, as a person, you know, when you hear something like that, I got to imagine it's just like your stomach just dropped, and, like, it's hard to even think and process at that moment, right?
There were things going through my head. I'm a black woman that lives in the suburbs. I grew up around, like, very wealthy and influential people that don't think that they're wealthy and influential at all. Mm-hmm. And I'm the first of 5 children, later to be 8 after my father got remarried. So a lot of the things that they had and they took for granted, I didn't necessarily have. And they're not to place Mike inside of this box, but that kind of took me back to when I was a kid, and then someone would just say something like, well, you're just poor. You're just poor. You're just poor. Of course, black people don't have money. Of course, there was I actually really, I really liked dolls, specifically when I was in 2nd grade. I collected Barbie dolls that I would get all the time, and I'd, like, wash their hair, and I'd try to, like, do it, but it's doll hair, so it, like, wouldn't stick and everything. And I remember taking them to school for show and tell, and this other girl told me that all of my dolls were ugly because they had black skin. And I kind of went there for a moment. And a lot of my feelings made me feel like this person that I had known and respected for a very long time. It made me very much so feel like an other, if that makes sense. It made me very much so feel like I wasn't a part of the family anymore. It made me feel like it doesn't matter the type of thing that you like, you'll always be different and no one will really understand. And here's someone that has helped you in the past and has actively cared about your success and championed a game that you also enjoy, and they're saying this about you. That was really a very hard moment for me to process, because I've gone through that moment before with people that I work with people that I happen to be inside of a room with, and with people that I wouldn't consider necessarily like family, but people that just happen to be inside of my family exclusively due to marriage or blood or whatever, right? That's one of the very first times that I've let someone in this close to me that has shared a sentiment like that, because I'm pretty good at vetting people. And so when that moment happened, immediately there's just this disconnect, and I just kind of shut down for about a second. And then I look at camera, and I immediately start mouthing the words, "What the fuck, Mike?" I know no one could see the camera,
right,
and I understand that. But that's what that silence was. Me angrily yelling without anything. I even mute my microphone at the moment because I have to do it, and I'm scared that there's going to be something audible, even though I know I'm not putting anything or any energy behind my vocal cords. I'm concerned because I know myself, and because I know how passionate I get when I'm upset. It took a lot for me to control myself where I could even put down words about that moment publicly. And I regret even publicly commenting necessarily on that moment, because I don't believe I was in a state to publicly comment on it. I think a lot of people pressured me into commenting about it early, when I really wasn't in a good place at all at that moment. And it felt like no one really, I shouldn't say no one, because my friends cared a lot about me. A lot of my friends reached out to me, and a lot of my friends were there the very next day as soon as they found out about the clip. And they made sure I was okay. But I wasn't really in a position or a headspace to acknowledge it to people that I didn't know. I wasn't in a head state or a place to necessarily talk about how I felt, because I didn't even know how I felt. I stayed up all night crying, just thinking if I did get Evo commentary based off like that entire moment. I don't know if my game's even going to be in Evo anymore. I don't know if I'm even going to be considered, because I just let there be dead air for 15 seconds. I wasn't able to handle that, and that happens all the time on mic. Someone could say literally anything, and you have to be ready to deal with it. And that's what being a professional commentator is being ready to deal with anything that's blown at you and focusing on that moment. And I wasn't able to do that in that moment. Part of me was really disappointed in myself for not yelling at him immediately. We went to, I think, commercial break immediately after that set. I don't remember how much longer it was, because I'm going to be honest, I was just kind of tuned out the rest of the tournament.
Oh, yeah.
Admittedly, it was really hard for me to get there again. It was very difficult for me. I tried my best. I went outside on the beef bake. I went to the bathroom, drank a little bit of water. I tried. And I couldn't get there again at all organically, and it hurt trying to force myself to be there.
I mean, again, sorry not to interrupt or anything, but even as both of us are commentators, I don't know that we would have been able to say anything right away either, so I wouldn't hold that against yourself. It's just,
I completely understand that literally everyone inside of the industry understands what I was going through, but I've never publicly, I think there are a lot of people in general that don't understand what it's like when you're on microphone.
Yeah.
And don't understand like how permanent a lot of these moments are for us and how we have to treat every single moment like it's permanent. When someone, I will say the very first thing that I was actively upset about was the fact that something as important as equality for African Americans and accountability for police officers and other authority figures that implement laws, the thing that really bothered me specifically about it was that that entire movement, that entire idea was being utilized for something as trivial as 3 seconds inside of a Skullgirls match. That is not fair. That is not fair. That is so incredibly disrespectful. And that's mostly, honestly, what I spoke to Mike about, was the fact that that was not okay. Because my parents have fought very, very, very hard for me to get to a point inside of my life where I'm able to even have a chance of success. And their parents fought before them, and their parents were sharecroppers and slaves. My grandmother was the daughter of a slave. This is not something that is just a blip in time. This is something that is actively history. And to even think that anyone knows enough about it to comment on it as a metaphor or a reference to something occurring inside of a video game for a short period of time is in and of itself so incredibly arrogant and disrespectful that I genuinely you know what? My mother always told me if I don't have nothing nice to say, not to say it. So I'm a hold that. I'm a hold that right there. Okay. But what I will say,
Up to you.
I'm a hold that right there, because I was letting myself get to a place where I don't want to be. So I'm not going to continue that. What I will say is that that moment was very painful for me, especially being the only Black woman in the room at the time, because I felt like everybody was outraged. Everybody was. I was the only Black woman that was there at that moment, and so I felt a lot of people just felt like I needed to be the collective Black anger at that moment. There's another portion later where Mike actually comes back, and I believe after the very next match, or at the end of the match, Mike apologizes in the best way that he knows how, verbally, which I actually believe was a relatively sincere apology, but I don't believe that it should have been rushed at that moment. I don't believe he should have apologized immediately on that stream until I genuinely believe that he should have apologized after the tournament had concluded, in his personal time after that moment, because I think it's very, very disrespectful to comment on something that serious in the middle of a match. Okay. I think it is. And I think especially because of the way that he did it, where he interrupted the whole motion of everything to do it, was very rude as well. And I felt like it deserved a good 5-minute apology, and I don't think Stream necessarily had that amount of time to give him. I think it would be rude to ask for that amount of time from Stream because of you fucking up. I think that's, you look at yourself, you sit there, and you think about how you felt, and then bring those feelings forward. Right. I think that's what needed to happen, which is why I was recommending that he did not apologize afterwards, because I believed that he needed to look inward and then apologize. Not on stream. Not on stream. None of that. I don't think that that was fair at all. The written apology bothered me. I think it bothered a lot of people, because it didn't necessarily show that he believed it was wrong. It was very wishy-washy. I think a lot of people felt that way. My statement was because I was concerned about his actual health. I was genuinely concerned that Mike was going to not be okay. And so I asked people to like just let him breathe and like not super harp on him, because if there's one person that I have seen have to go through a lot of negative press inside of our community that's not Sonic Fox, it's Mike. This was even before Skullgirls came out. He was just always somebody like that. People just make headlines about him. That's not necessarily something I wanted him to have to go through again. Even for this moment, I really wanted him to grow. I really, really, really wanted him to take this moment and own it and be like, I did something inconceivably horrible and I feel trash about it and I need to apologize for what happened there. And that's not necessarily how the apology came out from him. I can't speak on why he chose to write it that way or how it was construed, because I didn't construct any part of it, but I just know that I felt as though this entire thing, very honestly, as sorry as I am to say this, I felt like it was going to be another blip in an already terrible month. Mm-hmm. That's where I was with it. I had watched a man start to suffocate for 2 minutes earlier that week. And I thought that people would understand that there wasn't malice in his original intent to do it, and would focus on issues that were actively occurring inside of this nation. But people were very, very, very mad. They were much less forgiving than myself. I think that I try very hard to be an empathetic person. I try very hard to be a caring person. And intent is very important for me. And so when I see someone do something without malicious intent, it's hard for me to see them as inherently evil or inherently bad. There are a lot of people who don't do well on social media in general, just because people like to think it's all that exists anymore, but there was a time period back when this was just nothing, when we were just forum, when every single word that we put out was very, very carefully curated. There was no huge search engine that can now just pull up anything that you've posted in the past 10 years, literally in the blink of an eye. There was no static location. There was Ask Jeeves, AOL keywords, and maybe Yahoo. Like, that was it. So I understand very much so that there are a lot of people that social media is not kind to. And I try very hard to judge people on the merit of themselves and not necessarily how they are portrayed on the internet, because I understand that the internet is only a small clip of anybody's life. After the statements that I saw in the past 48 hours, it occurred to me, because I was one of the very first people that Carbon had gone to originally when she had an encounter with Mike, and she told me about the moment. Okay. I was the only person I believe she felt comfortable speaking to at that moment, and it was very important to me that we handled that moment correctly. I didn't go to staff, and this is something that I really do regret, because I think that I actually did handle it inappropriately. I spoke with other members inside of the community, and I told them to make sure that someone was around her the entire time, and to make sure that she was able to leave any encounter that she wanted. And I only spoke to people that I ultimately trusted, that I really, really knew, and it was literally 5 people. Who I won't necessarily share with right now, but one of those people did actually sign the Skullgirl statement, and I was really empowered when he did. I felt really, really good about that. But what I'm realizing now is that because I specifically told her that if I found out that this ever happened again, I would make sure that the person that caused this was never allowed in the community again. Mm-hmm. Ever. It just wasn't okay. She was a new player that had just come here to cosplay a video game that she happened to play eons ago, and she was verbally harassed by the developer of the game that she came there to play, and she was considering leaving. My very first interaction with the FGC wasn't incredibly positive, so moments like that are very important to me, especially when women tell me about them, because that's the reason I didn't join the Marvel community, and that's the reason I played Melee before I played Skullgirls. That's the reason why. I didn't join Marvel because people were being a gigantic butthole to me. And just making sure that my first experience was not positive. Mm-hmm. And that sat with me so incredibly wrong. That's something I've never wanted to see inside of our community. And so when I see later someone else DMing Mike from a place of, I want information about this game, and then them coming out with the ultimate understanding that they no longer are interested in this game and they're no longer excited about this game, that sits so wrong with me. That is a problem. And that's always been a problem inside this community, is that there are people that everyone in the community doesn't want to address. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people like that. And I'm ashamed to say that I believe that I did actually not handle it properly when I chose to allow that moment to happen. I genuinely believe that. I've since talked to people, and I've talked to Carbon and everything, and we've discussed it, and it's been brought up to organizers and everything, and the consensus is that because things were unfortunately not shared with staff prior by the QZ, there wasn't very much that would have been done regardless. Even if I had shared the moment, if Carbon didn't share it, then it wouldn't matter, was the consensus, unfortunately. And I understand that. I completely understand that. It's just, part of me feels responsible when moments like this happen because of something that I did or something that I acted. And ultimately, it's being kind to myself and understanding that I am human. I err, and it's about learning from that experience. And I think because I went through that experience, I now understand how to handle experiences in the future and how to grow from that, which is an ever-moving process. But I think that you have to go through something like that and look back at it and to recognize when it happens again and recognize when there is a problem. The first time, okay, maybe it was a mistake. There is more than enough happenstance in this world to cover something randomly happening. Like, my freaking mic could explode right now, and it wouldn't even necessarily be out of the idea of likely probability. Nobody would be that surprised. It'd be cool, but it wouldn't be like, the world is burning. You know what I mean? So it would be understandable to me if it happened once. It happening twice, after the community was made aware, after the community spoke with him privately, is a problem. That combined, obviously, with the moment that I spoke regarding earlier, and not necessarily having, I want to say, the necessary awareness to understand that that's unacceptable, really made it so that I felt that there was no option but to remove Mike from commentary and remove him from tournaments and offline and online for a period of time. So that's what I wanted to share with you guys tonight. Thank you so much for giving me a platform. I'm sorry I don't know how to graciously end this. I'm not Sajam, I can't do segues, okay? Look, I don't know.
No need. No need.
But thank you so much for having me, and I really do want to thank you so much, David, because I know you had originally reached out to me to do this last week, and I apologize in the tardiness that it took for me to get back, but I really do appreciate you still giving me an opportunity to speak, because, who would have guessed that I would have actually needed it, right? But I just want to thank you both for having me on the show, and it was a pleasure speaking to both of you guys. I know we haven't worked together prior, but I do see and respect the support that you guys both have given me. Specifically, you, James, I know you've retweeted quite a few of my tweets before and helped promote me and Skullgirl, so I really do appreciate that. Yeah. And I just hope that you guys continue to be amazing in these very trying times, and I hope that your life ultimately does get better after these moments. All right?
Well, I hope the same for you. Of course. Thanks a lot for coming on again. I would say that while I think it's true that when you are commentating, there are some expectations about how you should handle it if you're trying to be a professional. I don't think that moment was one of those things where the expectation is to be professional. Right. So however you handled it, don't be upset at yourself for not having been a pro. Mm-hmm. Don't feel that you needed to have been a pro in that moment. That's one of those moments that is just not. That is not a standard commentary thing that anybody needs to learn, right? That's just one of those moments that would catch anybody off guard.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah. I actually really needed to hear that. People have told me that before, but I'm still, if you can't tell, I'm having issues not being mad at myself and holding myself to a higher standard. I feel like whenever I go on microphone, I'm representing specifically my younger stepsister and my younger half sister. And I want them to be able to look at any content I make and just be proud of me, especially when I'm commentating. Yeah. So I try to think about that. And while I don't think they would have been disappointed at me, I would have loved to bring them a show that would make them really proud to say, hey, Sheila's here. She's on this stream. She's so cool. I want to be just like her when I grow up. I'm like, that'll just make me so happy, you know? So I have this whole idea of how I need to be in my head that isn't necessarily fair to myself, and I appreciate you letting me know that it's okay to be human. Thank you very much.
Absolutely right. Yeah, and I'm sure there'll be many moments in the future where your sisters can be proud, for sure. I think this is probably one right here.
Again,
so, nicely done. Thank you.
It's
all right. I'm gonna go ahead and dip. I'm assuming I can. Is it okay if I rattle off my social, even though they won't be updated for the next 2 weeks while engaging in
Go for it.
Self-health care? I am at the Purple Sharpie, DA Purple Sharpie, on literally every single platform. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, and of course, Facebook. May it rest in peace. But most notably, one of the things I will be doing, which I actually should say, is I will still be streaming relatively infrequently for the next couple of weeks. So if you guys, for some reason or for whatever reason, want to see me playing video games, I will not be announcing it anywhere. I'll exclusively be going live randomly on twitch.tv/DA Purple Sharpie, and you can check me out there. I really will not be promoting myself at all these upcoming weeks, and I apologize about that, but please understand that right now I am in a place where I really just need to work on me for a multitude of reasons. But please suffice it to say that I understand myself and I need to do this. So thank you very much.
You got it.
Yeah. Well, you guys have a blessed evening. Thank you so much.
One thing I just want to say before you go, is just, you said this very, very early on, and, as a community leader and as influencer like you are, a lot of the times one of the hardest things to do is to make sure that we take care of ourselves. And so I just want to say in the next 2 weeks, definitely, take your time, do everything you need to take care of yourself, and, just we'll wait when you come back and take as long as you need, basically.
Thank you so much for that. I really do appreciate that so much. And you guys genuinely be kind to yourself. I know it's not easy right now. It's not easy for African Americans, not easy for people of color, and it's not easy for all of us. So please be kind to yourselves. Thank you so much again. Bye.
Thank you. See you.